This video is only part of an unpaid, unbiased, in-depth review from an average rider's perspective, so check out the rest in the link below at thegoodride.com. If you want real advice, fill out the Me Harmony profile in the link below so I can help you properly. And if this video helps, please consider donating or buying through our links. Thanks for watching. Welcome to The Good Ride. I'm James Beastie, and I am all that is average. And this is the Salomon High Path 159. I rode this with my Union Atlas, Burton Kendos, and got it in a wide variety of conditions. Everything from some knee-high powder, kind of thick, to about 4 inches of messy snow, to some pretty good but flat-lit groomers. To give you a short summary, this is only slightly tapered and directional, but still very between the feet. And if you're coming off a board like the Volley Fish next to me, then this will feel super double-ender. But if you're coming off a true twin, this might feel slightly directional. But overall, it's that kind of board that does a lot of things really well. Nothing exceptional, but that's all you can ask for a one-board quiver, an all-mountain board. You can ride this switch really well. It's got excellent pop. It's got good ollie power. It's relatively easy to butter and play around with if you're in that mood, but it can also rail a hard turn. You can set it back pretty far and get a good amount of directional float for its shape. And it lives right in that border between being all mountain and free ride. It is a great one board quiver. It might not be the dampest board, but I think most will be happy with the speed it can provide. Now, when it comes to sizing, this 59 felt really good for my weight, but I think I would like the 56 a little bit better for my boot size. That would be perfect. And I think that 56 is kind of like that right size for a one board quiver. This 59 though, totally works if you want a little bit more board. If you're like me, spec-wise, it could work too. But I think I'd prefer the faster turn initiation of the 56. Now, when it comes to shape, this is just slightly tapered, pretty directional, but still feels very centered between the feet when you have it on reference stance. When you set it back, it feels a little more directional. It feels a touch tapered. You can kind of feel that. Coming off a twin, this might feel pretty directional, but coming off something like the Woolly next to it, that just makes this feel almost like a true twin. So it really depends on your perspective, but overall, the tail isn't washy when you weight it centered. You can drive off your front foot pretty well. You can drive through a turn centered, or you could lean back, and it all does pretty well. It likes a little bit centered to a little bit back-footed weight, but overall, it's very balanced in terms of how it feels. And the camber profile is mostly camber. There's a good amount of camber underfoot, which is great when you're one-footing and flat basing. It tracks really well. It's got lots of pop and drive, etc., etc. But it's not very easy to skid a turn when you get off your game. It's a little better than full camber, of course, but it's a little more technical, a little more locked in than most hybrid shapes out there these days. But I think a lot of people who like full camber but just want something a little bit more friendly will like this profile, but it's just not that easy to skid turns. Now let's talk flex. You can see there's a very medium flex going on here. It's decent in the nose, a little stiffer in the tail, and then right here, that's where all the energy happens. It's got a ton of pop, but you can still butter and play around with this and have a time. And this overall flex personality really is easy for somebody like me, an average rider, to ollie easy. And it popped really well. The only thing I felt was that it was a little bit bucky and bouncy sometimes in really uneven snow, and it didn't really feel like the kind of board you want to ride all day in really messy, uneven, thick snow or hard micro bumpy snow, but it still did good enough if you slow down, dial back your riding a little bit. You can ride all day with this. I've ridden a lot of boards that are worse than this. It's just not the best when it comes to that either. So not really a deal breaker for me. I loved this board and I was okay with it in all conditions that I rode. So the base glide on this is very good. I felt like even unwaxed, this did a great job. I think it's definitely upper tier. This is not a bomber by any means, but it's got that moderate to above average mountain speed that we all need from a board like this. So I think it did fine, and it's no bomber. If you like to point it, you're gonna be unhappy. But if you like to ride around the mountain and ollie a lot and just have easy air, you're gonna love this. Now, when it comes to edge hold, I felt like the High Path grips really well. Not amazing, not a icy snow specialist, but definitely competent in hard snow. Whatever they're doing with the side cut radius here really helps it grip, even when you get that surprise moment and all of a sudden you hit an ice patch and you just didn't see it in flat light like the day I was riding. It gripped enough to where you didn't just slide out and hit the snow, fall on your ass if you were on a heel side, or slam down on your hands on your toe side. So I really like that. Now, when it comes to turn initiation and the turning experience and carving, this was pretty quick edge to edge for a board of this width. I think it's like close to 26, high 25s, somewhere around there. And sometimes that can be a little slow for me, especially when there isn't a lot of taper in the tail compared to the nose. It's only a few mil of taper. So I found this to be good enough. I think the 56 would be perfect edge to edge, and I would really like that. But this turned quick enough as long as I wasn't in ultra tight spots. When it came to the turning experience, I liked this balanced radius. It was really fun with across the groomer carves and circle carves. It was really fun just making quick S-turns and springing it back and forth, edge to edge, getting it to pop out of each turn. And then if you wanted to make more down the line, drawn out, narrower S-turns, it did pretty well too. So it felt really balanced for me. It might be a different experience for you if you have a different boot size and you're on this board. But for me, I felt it was very well rounded. And then when I laid into a hard carve, as long as I wasn't going too fast or I was in too uneven snow, this really had a good spring out of the turn and lots of drive and pop, and I loved that feeling. It's a very good board for hard carving. And I even liked throwing it around switch and trying to switch carve, and it wasn't that bad there either. Now, when it comes to powder, I rode this against some pretty amazing boards in powder. But in comparison to some good all mountain boards, like same day, sometimes I rode the Yes Standard Unink, my Yes Basic Unink, and many other all mountain boards that I've tried. For example, the Nidecker Escape Plus and the Nidecker Thruster and the Nidecker Escape. We all rode on the same day with this. Oh man, they did really good, but this was no slouch either. I think this is a very good floater. When you compare it against some boards that are really much more set back and floaty, yeah, it didn't hang in there, but it's good for what it is. It's great for having that centered feel on groomers, but it has good setback on board and good directional float for what it is. And I think anything above knee-high powder, you probably want something better. But overall, I think it had good directional float and I liked it, especially if you're just looking for one board to do everything. It did really well. Now, when it comes to riding switch, like I said before in the turning experience, this does ride switch really well. And I found myself throwing the tail around and riding that way more than I thought I would based on this more directional nose versus tail. But centered on board, this feels really good, and I thought it was fun. I'm just having a tough season. I've been battling some injuries, So I didn't even want to take it in the pipe, which I usually do, or hit a small kicker. But I think you could even hit a jib or two with this and it would be okay. It's not ideal. I think this would be great in the pipe if I had the 56. It would be a little easier to manage on the walls, but the 59 would be fine. And this is great for just hitting small kickers around the mountain like I was doing. And it would be fun in the park for most sized kickers as well. So I think it's a pretty balanced board, especially with having a little bit of taper for riding the park. So overall, it's really good to see this High Path. I felt like the Assassins were not quite the all mountain board that I wanted. They're great as directional twins, keeping it centered, but they didn't quite have the setback that this does. They didn't quite have that feel underfoot in all conditions. They got a little more cranky than this board did. Even though this might buck and bounce you around a little more than those Assassins, this just doesn't seem to pass that vibration into your joints like the other boards do. And I just really like this board. I think it's a great addition to Salomon's quiver, and it's a board I could easily own and have a great time with for a season.